Hello, entrepreneurs. Joe DeChara here with a special Joe DeChara show. And I have one of my new friends to join me. Like I said in the past, it could get a little boring just listening to me all the time. So I try to find people with different perspectives on business, and I definitely found him. Dean Fox he joined my group probably from the beginning and was instantly posting positive messages. So I gave him the honor of being the first pre approved member where I don't have to go and edit and approve or decline posts and stuff like that. Anyway, so we have Dean all the way from, where are you from, Dean?
I'm from the northeast of England in the UK.
Awesome. So I know you're trying to hide that accent, but it's not going to work. But this is the first time we're actually chatting. We've been trying to connect for a while now, and so I'm learning more about you and what you do, and it's pretty interesting, and we'll get into it. But maybe you want to like introduce yourself and tell people who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, my name is Dean Fox from here in the UK. My background's in primarily sales, marketing, business development over the years, both in the corporate world and then more latterly in my own business. And I specialize now in kind of coaching entrepreneurs and business owners, probably in two aspects of their journey in terms of business and life. And not on the business strategy, but more on them personally. And one is where people are looking for growth in their business. So they're looking to grow, they take their business to the next sort of level, but they're feeling stuck. So they're not able to take the actions that they know they should be taking on a daily basis. I use this phrase often, that they've got this kind of mental handbrake on. So they know they know they've got it within them. They're just not able to kind of break through that and unlock that potential. Or at the other end of the spectrum, where someone has got success in their career or perceived success, but they still don't feel fulfilled. So they thought that was what they wanted, but it turns out that perhaps that wasn't exactly what they were looking for, and helping them unpick what it was they really wanted and why they don't feel that way. So that's what I spend most of my time doing now.
So that's interesting. It really got my interest with the second part, because early in my career, I tell the story of I had a very wealthy, self-made entrepreneur, owned restaurants. Built. He could have wrote a check for $1 million and it would clear. And that was, he was one of my first mentors, but the guy was miserable. And his children hated him. I mean, it was sad. And then I had clients that were living from week to week and they were happy. So I wanted to figure out, how do I get his money and be happy? And so what I teach people now is, listen, if you focus on the money, you can get it. But what I've seen is it's like chasing a cat.
Yeah,
it's like herding cats.
Absolutely. I say to everybody that I come across when we get to a subject about happiness, my line always is that happiness is not something that you get; it's something that you are. So if you think you're going to get it from something external, whatever that happens to be, then I can guarantee that won't be the way. I use my own example. I forever did that in the corporate world. I chased from starting out in my career to being national sales manager with a 7-figure budget and managing teams of people, thinking that that's what it was: the house, the company car, the expense account. I thought that's what would make me happy, and it didn't. And then I thought, well, okay, maybe it's because I'm working for someone else. Maybe when I have my own business, then that'll be what will make me happy. And so I left and went into business for myself, and I still didn't find that. So it was only when I suddenly realized, a bit like you were saying there, that when I stopped chasing all of those things and looked at, okay, what if I'm just happy? Then I can have all of those things as well. That's great. and it makes me feel great. But I was happy before that. They're not what define me. And I think it's really, really important that people understand that. Otherwise, you end up going down a tunnel, like you said, of chasing a cat or chasing something that it never ends. You end up with this, what I call when-then mentality. You know, when I achieve this, then I'll be happy. When I've got this, then I'll be happy.
So yeah, I love this mindset, and I could see why what you were saying every day resonated with me. So where do you? So there's I have a lot of questions now. So what I try to do is help people avoid that, and I deal with mainly, you know, I've you deal with established businesses, obviously, and they're growing. I deal with people that are just getting into business, and they have a passion, but it's sort of like a struggle because they feel like they gotta make money. They gotta make money. But it's more the way I approach it, Dean, is you got to be of service.
Yeah.
And do it with, you know, with your, and then the money comes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not easy to teach people this.
No.
How do you?
It's definitely an experiential thing. I think, you know, what I have a bit like yourself. If I ever get to work with someone who's on that, either just the start of their journey or they're growing, and I specifically look at getting them to try and define exactly what it is that they want. A number of times I've come across people who say, I want this, but when we actually do the work, that's not what they want. And it's understanding that as early as possible, because it has two impacts if you don't. One is that you ultimately end up chasing something that doesn't fulfill you, or you set yourself a strategy aligned with what you think you want, which then doesn't allow you to have the things that you really want.
Okay, so this is interesting because where I start with my program is your purpose, to try to figure out what it is that you want, and it's apparently not that easy to do. And that's a mystery to me. Like, why is it that we don't really know what we want? Like, we think we know what we want. Like, I want money. Once I have money, then I'll be able to do all this stuff. So,
and that, for me, that comes from this, both from a child, we're conditioned, and we're conditioned in three ways. We're conditioned environmentally, we're conditioned socially, and we're conditioned, you know, by our genetically, by our family and our parents and things like that. But all of those things, in some aspects, all of those things lead us to the same outcome. So, you know, the social description of success is one of, you know, a 6 or 7 figure income, or, you know, a typical house, or this type of car, and we're judged and defined by those things always. And yet the best definition I ever came across for success, which is the one I use most often, is by a guy called Earl Nightingale.
Okay.
Which was, success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal or ideal. And I use it often because people define success as being the end point. When I've done this, that's when I will be successful. No, success is the progressive realization of that you're actually looking to achieve. So if you've made a decision to do something on purpose in the attainment of something, then you are successful by definition of moving towards it. So it's about the journey and not the end point.
I was just going to say that they keep saying it's the journey. I'm a fan of a movie called The Peaceful Warrior.
Okay.
And that was, you know, it was that was one of my aha moments in my life. You know, it's like, listen, enjoy the moment. The only time we have is right now. So how do you figure out really what it is that you want?
So I use a process which has been adapted from 3 or 4 different people that I've come across, different mentors that I have or have had in the past. And essentially, I look at holistically. If I was working with someone who was looking to define what it is that they really wanted, we'd look at, okay, so in 5 or 6 categories that I have, write down 5 or 6 things that you really want in each of those categories. And most people, not everybody, but most people, that's the easy part. Everybody can say, I've got, 10 things I want to achieve in, one of the categories might be contribution. What impact do you want to have? How would you want to give back? How do you want to be of service? So people might have 10 things in there that they want to achieve as part of that category. Okay, now let's look at personal. Let's look at financial. And then what I'll say to them is, great. Now what I want you to do is in each category, I want you to rank the ones that are most important to you, so that we end up with a single one in each category. And then I might say to them, okay, now within those categories, I want you to start ranking the categories. Because that's when people start to say, oh, okay, so this is now more important than this. And I never really thought about that before. Okay, so maybe we should be thinking about that a little bit more now. Because a bit like you, the number of times I've come across, I use examples sometimes, even from my own personal journey. One of my eldest son lives in the US, in Atlanta. My youngest son lives in the UK. So one of our goals is to be location independent, so that we can travel here and wherever. So everything we did has to be designed with that in mind. Yet only 2 or 3 years ago, part of my process was delivering some of our events. We're all face to face on a month by month basis with groups of business owners. Well, that strategy is not aligned with how I want to live my life. And so until I realize, well, okay, this is what I really want, then I need to define a strategy that goes with it. Otherwise, you end up, and that's how come you end up with, I've seen 6- and 7-figure business owners who are still working 80 to 100 hours a week. And that's not what they wanted at the beginning. And it's like, well, but you've set up your strategy based on what you thought you wanted, not how you want to live your life.
I get it completely. I like to use the vacation analysis. Like, you don't just drive to the airport because, okay, I think, I would like to be on a beach somewhere. You lay out the specific actions, and I love the approach that you just explained, because I have a similar approach with small businesses. You're prioritizing, and I think I'm going to try that after we're done here. So, because I'm still trying to figure out exactly what it is that I want. That's another question. Do you ever really pinpoint it?
Yeah, I think people talk about finding their purpose. So I think there's 2 things. One is that I'm a big fan of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and he has this idea of a definite major purpose, a chief aim, if you like. But for me, those things, they're not like lifelong purposes. It's not just one thing. It could be your definite purpose for the next 3 years, that this is what I really want to achieve in my life for the next 3 years. That's great. But in terms of a purpose for you, your contribution, how you want to have an impact, how you want to serve and give back, I don't think you find that. I think that finds you.
Okay.
My experience, I never ever, if you'd asked me 20 years ago, Dean, would you like to be a coach and an international speaker? I'd say, no, not particularly. Why would I want to do that? It just wasn't part of, but it came about as a result of the journey that I had, the things that I'd experienced. Everything pointed me towards that. And it was ultimately, like I said, it found me. It was a case of, this is what you should be doing. And this is the reason you went through all of that in the first place.
So it's like, right. So I was going to say, so like you went through a lot of stuff where you might have said, oh, why did I do? That was a waste of time. I spent 20 years in a career. Then you find out, well, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. 100%. People say to me, I look back over my life, and part of what when I talk about a specific period in my life where, by 2000 where are we now? By 2000, I was a national sales manager for a British PLC. I ran the whole of the country in terms of sales and marketing and business development. By 2007, I'd left the corporate world. I'd set up my own business. I was in real estate. in the UK. My wife and I had a 7-figure portfolio. We were growing a substantial business. You know, a year later, by the end of 2008, we'd lost that business because of the financial crisis. I'd also lost some other investments. So by 2009, I was really struggling both financially and psychologically, my own mental health. 2010, we had a near-death car accident. We were almost killed in a road traffic accident.
Oh my God.
And by the end of 2010, I was, you know, I openly say I was considering suicide. I left home 2 weeks before Christmas on a morning when I said to my wife I was going out for a walk with no intention of ever coming home that day. And the question I asked myself, there were only 2 times in my life where I experienced something and I couldn't understand why or how or what it meant. One was that at the point of the car accident, so after the car accident, there was a point at which I thought I was dead. I've never experienced anything like it before up to that point. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't worried. I didn't have any problems. I was blissfully calm and peaceful. And people will say, oh, that will be the drugs you were getting at the scene of the accident, all of those sort of things. But I'd never experienced anything like that. And I don't know how long it lasted. It could have only been seconds, but almost like you said, this epiphany of, wow, I wish I felt like that all the time. And then I went through this period of another 6 or 7 months of really struggling. And then on the day that I'd left home, I went to some woodland near where we lived. And I sat in a small clearing and I said to myself, right, this is it. The world would be a better place without me. My family would be better off without me. Today, I'm not going home. I'm going to end my life here. When I made that decision, and I don't mean when I was thinking about it, but when I actually made a decision that that's what I was going to do, I had exactly the same feeling.
Wow.
I was bereft of stress. I didn't have any fear. I was just blissfully calm. And what that gave me in that time was this idea that, hang on a minute, before I do anything, let me just think for a second. I went through all of this stuff and I could have been killed 7 months ago, 8 months ago, and I wasn't. Why was that? Why did I go through all of that stuff and survive only to bring me to this point? There's a reason for this, and I cannot see why. But it was enough for me to question, and it brought me home for me to say, right, there must be something else. There must be more to life. I must be doing this for a reason. And as I said, later on, it transpired that, well, the reason you went through all of that is to be able to help people at the stages in their life that you've already experienced, that not many, you don't want them to get to that point. I want to be able to help them before they ever reach that stage. And so, like I said, it kind of claims you. It's like, this is what you were meant to do.
Wow.
And it's at those points when I start to see with real clarity that this is what I want. This, you know, doing. People say to me, you know, there's a saying, isn't there, that if you do what you love, then you'll never work a day in your life, and you would do it for free. But that's what I would do. I would sit and talk to people and help them all day, every day, for free, to be of service. The money comes, as you said earlier.
You know, I'm at a loss for words right now, because what you just described is so profound to me. You know, I do a lot of masterminding with new business owners, people that are raw, that haven't gone through any of these. You know, I'm like, listen, it's going to be tough. Life is tough, and now you just added a business to it, so it's going to be even harder. But just seeing them and knowing that it's going to be, and I just want to teach them not to beat themselves up, Dean. I think that's what I'm trying to get. And I think that's because we all do it. I do it. And then this is what happens, Dean. Sometimes, and it's happening more and more often, I say, maybe I'm doing everything exactly the way I'm supposed to be doing it. Maybe it's just not materializing as fast as I want it to. But if I look back like 6 months ago, I'm like, oh my God, in 6 months I got, you know, 8 new clients, these opportunities, but yet I'll still beat myself up because in a way I want to improve.
Yeah.
So is that?
Yeah, everybody I've worked with, everyone I've come across in business or any type of that ilk, and myself included, all the same. We're all viewing success. So it's always, well, I should be way further on than I am right now. But
Right.
who said we should be way further on? By what definition? And we usually judging ourselves by somebody else's yardstick as well. The number of times I come across entrepreneurs who say, yeah, but, I've got someone in my field, in my sector who, they did 6 figures last year and we haven't got there yet, or they did 7 figures and we're only at 6 figures. And I'm like, yeah, but just because they're at that part of their journey doesn't mean that's where your journey should be. And we do it too many times. There's a statistic that says that the average number of times the average person tries before they give up something is less than 1. That's the average, which means that most people are not even trying.
Wow.
So I often say to people in business, if you're out there and you're trying, you're already ahead of 70, 80% of the rest of the people. Yet we're judging our yardstick by the 2 or 3% who are already making it. We're not judging it by the fact that we're, ahead of 80% of everybody else.
Yeah, and then people don't realize that those few people that made it went through their journey. And when you look at it, it's never pretty.
No.
They never say, oh, yeah, this was a piece of cake. I went into business and I just hit it, right off the bat.
And the number of people who say that, when we see them and we talk about them being overnight successes, they suddenly appear and they've gone from what looks like 0 to 7 figures or whatever. But, it's taken them 20 years to do that. We just don't see the rest of it. We only see the bit when it kind of happens, when it's hugely successful, when they've become this bright star. And I use, wherever I can, I use either my personal experience or my experience of those around me. My younger brother, hugely talented musician and singer-songwriter, but has worked effectively 20 years of his life with one single goal in mind, that's all he ever wanted to do. Didn't want to do anything else. When anything else that was associated with it, was a talented sports person, could have gone into sport, but music was his thing. And he said, this is all I ever wanted to do. Spent 20 years. Now he's extremely successful, but people only see his last 3 years. Everybody's going, in 3 years you've gone from playing in a local bar with nobody to shows with 5,000 and 10,000 people and platinum albums. Yeah, but that's 20 years in the making.
Yeah, 17 years when he was playing in dive bars and nobody was there.
Sure, standing on street corners, busking and things like that. Nobody really sees that. And most people are not prepared to do that. Then, they just say, well, yeah, I only want the 3 years at the end. I don't really want to go through the 17 years beforehand.
Yeah, and honestly, I think we're talking about it now, and I think that's part of it. People want the easy, let me just, and I was talking about this last night on a podcast. I want to just I want to buy business. Just tell me how much it costs to be successful, and I'll write the check out. And so all these, tons of new clients will come to me. It doesn't work like that.
No. No.
And you got to put the time and effort in, and it's not easy. I mean, you just start. So what you're telling me is 10 years ago, you started from scratch with a brand new business, correct?
Yeah. And really, I say this now, that my whole journey's taken 10 years, but my business, I didn't really start coaching and speaking until probably 3 years ago. So, my last 3 years that people start to see me on podcasts or running live events, or I've had people come up to me at events and say, I really want to speak in front of events. It's fantastic. You've got such a talent for it. And I'm like, yeah, but I spent 7 years preparing for I didn't just spend last night preparing for it. This is what I do. And if you're willing to invest the time and the effort, then you can do it. Anybody can do whatever they want, but you have to be prepared to put it in the effort. You've got to be
Yes.
prepared to do what it takes to get there.
So let's, because you brought something up, and I said I like to keep these to under a half hour because that's just we don't have a long attention span.
Yeah, sure.
You've given some really good information here, but I want to bring it forward because you said something about you were doing live events, which meant going to a place, and that's just not happening now, and it might not happen for a while.
Yeah.
So how are you, from a business standpoint, how are you pivoting on that?
Yeah, so we're transitioned some of those group programs that we ran, and some of those, again, a little bit like a mastermind, so some group coaching. Those are now being developed. We're about to relaunch those as online programs. So some of the live recordings that we did and some of the additional content that we've produced, we're now going to put them together and launch them to the website. So some of our events are now going to be online programs. And again, I believe every single thing that happens, every event is either an opportunity or an obstacle, and we get to decide what that is. In 2008, when I lost my business, I saw only obstacles, yet there were businesses that launched in 2008 that are now billion-dollar brands.
Yeah.
So it kind of been the time. It couldn't have been. So right now, as we've gone through this period, there are people who are seeing obstacles. I see this as a huge opportunity. People said to me as a speaker, how are you going to do events? How are you going to speak when there are not going to be any events? I've spoken at more events in the last 16 weeks than I probably did in the last 12 years.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
I have a friend, Craig Duswell, does large events twice a year. You have 500, 600, 700 people at an event, and he can't do it now. And then he started doing, and I think he likes it more because if you think about it, you got a much larger potential audience, right?
I agree. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, it's been great fun.
It's different, but it's almost like a new acceptable platform has been born.
Yeah.
We will go back to the events at some point, but I don't think they'll ever be the same. Myself, I'm in New York. It takes a lot of time and money to fly to California to go to a 3-day event.
Yeah.
So, and I was in a 3-day event the other day. And the good thing is I could turn it off and go shopping if I need to.
Yeah. And probably it'll have been recorded, which means that you can come back to some of the content. You can pick and choose the bits you want to be there live for, and the bits you want to take later on. I just think there's going to be a lot more of those. Yeah.
So, all right, Dean, listen, this has been great. Is there any, if somebody wants to reach out to you, how do they get you?
So they can get me through all the social channels, through the group and things like that, and on social media. If they're looking for me on either Instagram or on Facebook, I'm at Dean Fox Coaching, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. Or they can reach out to me. They can get me directly at the website, and just drop me a message through there. Okay,
and what is that, Dean Fox Coaching?
It's deanafox.com.
deanafox.com.
Yeah.
Okay, I should have had the. We'll do this again because you're a pretty interesting guy and you got some. It's great when I get to interview people and I get to learn a lot of stuff. So I appreciate that. Any parting words of wisdom?
My thing is, I already said it. I've been trying to say it a lot recently. Is that whatever you're going through right now is either an obstacle or an opportunity, and you get to decide that. A simple shift in the way that you look at it will completely change how you see it. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Awesome. I love it, Dan. I'm so glad we finally connected. If you can do me a favor, sometimes when I hit end broadcast, it just you'll get wiped out. So I'd like to talk to you for a few seconds after. So
yeah, sure.
Anyway, that's Dean Fox. I highly recommend him. I hope to be in the 7-figure business realm, but not have to hire Dean because I don't want to have to get, but Dean, it's really been great. I appreciate it, and we will be back another time, another day, and I'll let you know. Thank you, everyone.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Joe.